What's up everybody, it's Anand and today I'm at Ray Williams seminar here in Santa Cruz Strength, and I'm really excited for this because as most of you already know that Ray Williams is the #1 squatter in the world, and if you've been following me for a while then you know how much I love to squat and how much of a struggle it's been for me. So hopefully today is going to be a great experience lifting with Ray Williams. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that he's actually going to squat 1,000 pounds at the seminar, which is just incredible, because he's squatted well over 1,000 pounds in competition, but to do it at a seminar and to witness it is just something out of this world for me. So I'll be recording all this, I'll be taking my notes, and hopefully these tips will help you improve your own squat as well. What's up everybody, it's Anand from UntitledChapter.com, and if I seem a little bit more excited than usual, that's because I just got back from attending Ray Williams seminar. I have to say that this seminar was one of the best days I've had so far as a lifter, and that's not only because I learned so much from Ray Williams himself, but I got to witness a 1,009 pound squat in person. And as of the date of making this video, his best squat so far is 1,069.2 pounds in competition at the USAPL Arnold Classic competition in March 2018. And as you can see here, I've got all my notes from the seminar, so make sure to stick around till the end of the video because I think this is going to be a great learning experience for all of us. The first thing we learned was you got to know your own body. Even though powerlifting may seem straightforward to a lot of people because it's the squat, the bench and the deadlift, the thing is, all of us are individuals and we have to adapt our training and the basic techniques that we have to our own bodies. He compared powerlifting to having a special education, and this simply means that there's no one size fits all when it comes to powerlifting. And even though we have all the basic techniques such as how to squat, how to bench, how to deadlift, mobility techniques, mobility drills, the thing is you have to adapt these to the individual. And even in my own coaching I found this to be true, that the individual differences can be really large. For example, if you can take a really solid training program and you can give it to one person and that person is going to make really great progress, whereas you can give the same program to another person and that person may not make very much progress at all. So the individual differences are really big, and I've actually learned this from talking to a lot of different coaches myself. If you have two people who are about the same height but their proportions are different, so if you have long femurs like me, then you're gonna have a little bit of a more forward lean when you squat, and you also need more hip drive in order to finish the squat. The next thing we learned was the importance of mobility, and this is something that I really needed to learn because, to be honest, I've been pretty much neglecting my mobility. But the #1 thing that we learned about mobility was most likely things are not what they seem. So you may think that you have tight hips, but the fact may be that you actually have tight ankles. And what happens if you have tight ankles? It's gonna prevent you from keeping your feet flat on the floor, especially when you squat. If you want to build a solid building, you need a solid foundation, which is exactly what your feet do when you squat. In order to maximize the force transfer into the floor, you have to keep your feet as flat as possible into the floor. So he showed us two great ankle stretches that anyone can do, but for the first one, you'd actually need a partner. For the second one, you can do it yourself. The first stretch involves placing your foot onto a platform such as a bench, and then you can ask your partner to press down on your ankle bones from both sides. The second stretch is very straightforward and anyone can do, and that's a simple ankle stretch against the wall. So basically you face the wall, you place your toes on the wall and keep your heel on the floor, and then you just lean into the movement, and that will help you stretch out those ankles. So the longer you can stay flat-footed, the more power you can generate. Then he also showed us a couple of great stretches, one for the hamstrings and one for the hips. Both of these movements can be done at the same time. It's pretty much you lay on the floor with your back flat on the floor, and you would need a resistance band. I would say a medium to heavy resistance band. If you don't know what I'm referring to, I'll leave a link down in the description below. The first thing you want to do is you want to stretch out those hamstrings using the band. The next thing you would do is try to increase your hip range of motion by using the same bands in the same position, but instead of stretching your hamstrings out, straight in front of you, you rotate your feet out as much as you can. After you've done your mobility, now you're ready to squat. And the most important thing when it comes to squat is that you have to learn how to stay tight and how to maintain constant tension. And even before you unrack the bar, you have to learn how to get tight, because if the weight is heavy enough, then it's nearly impossible to get as tight as possible after you've unracked it. So make sure to learn the proper setup. And if you haven't watched my video on how to squat properly, then click over here or click on the link in the description below, where I go over all of these steps in great detail. And once you get tight enough, you have to learn how to breathe properly. And the idea is that if you're using a weightlifting belt, you want to expand your core into the belt. So it's like a 360-degree expansion. And again, in my video on how to squat, I go over this in great detail. But this is known as the Valsalva maneuver, where you take a deep breath into your diaphragm and you push all the weight down and out against the belt. And what this will do is it's going to create that intra-abdominal pressure, and it's going to help stabilize your core. Now comes time for the actual unracking, where a lot of people, including myself, mess up. So in this seminar, we actually had the opportunity to squat and have Ray Williams critique our technique. And one of the biggest mistakes that I was making that I didn't even realize was I wasn't walking out properly. I was almost like, unracking the bar and then walking out really fast. And what this would do is it wouldn't let the barbell settle on my back properly. And if you've seen any of his videos, he always lets the barbell settle and the weight settle before he takes another step. So what he taught me was, after you unrack it, you want to let the weight settle. Then once you feel that the weight settle, you want to take another step back, let it settle again, and then take your final step, but let it settle again before you start your actual squat. And before you start the squat, you want to think of spreading the floor. So now that you've set up properly, you've walked out the weight properly by letting it settle, and now that you're maintaining tightness, the next thing to do is to actually squat. And Ray recommends that you start the squat by breaking at the knees, and as soon as you break at the knees, you want to push your pelvis back. Now I'm referring to the low bar squat, so if you're doing a high bar squat, then your technique is gonna differ slightly. Unlike a high bar squat where you pretty much squat up and down, in a low bar squat, you also have to think of back and forward. So as soon as you break at the knees, you also wanna push your pelvis back, and that will set you up in the right direction and the right amount of forward lean when it comes to the low bar squat. And of course, you don't want to lean forward too much either, because that's going to make your squat look more like a good morning. And if you're having trouble with this, you might want to try exercises such as the safety bar squats, which is going to force you to stay more upright, and it's going to build up that core strength that will help you stay more upright. And if you don't have a safety squat bar, then you can maybe try front squats or searcher squats, and that will actually teach you to stay more upright. He also recommends that when you squat, that you maintain a neutral head position. And you often see a lot of beginners, when the weight starts to get heavy and they're squatting out of the hole, when they hit that sticking point, right, what happens is they tend to throw their head back, and as you throw your head back, the first thing that happens is you actually lose your upper back tightness, and you also lose that hip drive. Another thing that you'll find when people tend to rock their head back on the squat is that their weight shifts towards the heel and they're no longer pressing throughout the entire foot. And according to Ray, one of the best ways of improving your technique is to squat a little bit slower, especially when you're lifting light weights or if you're warming up. And I completely agree with Ray. And if you've been following my channel or if you follow me on Instagram, you're gonna see that I regularly incorporate these things into my own training, whether it's doing pause squats or tempo squats. But the most important thing that he talked about, whether you want to squat, bench, deadlift or any other lift, is that you have to be ritualistic with it. You have to develop certain rituals that every time you step under the bar, it's exactly the same. So some people tend to be more animated when they come to their actual setup and their rituals. But whatever ritual or whatever style you have when you set up, you have to set up in exactly the same way. So you gotta step under the bar in the same way. You gotta grip the bar in the same way. You gotta take a breath in the same way. And also the unracking and the walkout has to be in exactly the same way every single time. So the 4 biggest takeaways for me in the seminar were, number 1 is that you gotta know your own body. And this is where the individual differences come in, because even though powerlifting seems like a straightforward sport, the fact is that there's no one size fits all. Number 2 is that you gotta work on your mobility, and the first thing you should look at when it comes to mobility is your ankles, because a lot of us tend to have tight ankles. And if you have tight ankles, it's going to prevent you from keeping your feet flat on the floor. And if you can't keep your feet flat on the floor, then you're not maximizing that power into the floor. And you need a solid foundation for all 3 of the lifts, where your feet have to be on the floor and you actually use that power transfer into the floor on all 3 lifts. The 3rd biggest takeaway was that you have to learn how to create and maintain that full body tightness, whether you're squatting, benching or deadlifting, because that's going to maximize everything. And the 4th biggest takeaway is that you have to be ritualistic with your lifting. So whether you're training or competing, you want to keep things as consistent as possible. So every time you step under the bar, you want to step under the bar in the same way that you always do, and it's the same with all your lifts. So there you have it, guys. I hope this was informative, and if you ever have the opportunity to attend one of Ray's seminars, then I highly recommend that you do. And even someone like myself, who actually is constantly surrounded by a lot of smart people and a lot of great lifters, I still got to learn so much from Ray just in this one day. And to top off this already amazing seminar, I actually got to witness Ray squatting over 1,000 pounds in person, which was just amazing to me. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button down below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more videos like these. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.